Welcome to the Undeniable Dads Podcast. Jeff, your host, and my co-host, Aaron, over here.
Howdy, howdy.
If you're not familiar with the Undeniable Dads Podcast, we've created a community here. We want to help every dad become a better dad, a better person, their 2.0 self, ultimately the best version of themselves, right?
Absolutely.
This community is dedicated to basically empowering dads and inspiring them to do all the things that are required for them to become the best version of themselves.
That will flow into every part of their life, and that's the hope. By being better here, it's going to show up better everywhere for you.
And it will. We have stories we're going to share with you guys. We've had guests on that they're going to share their stories. We're going to show you exactly how we did it in hopes that it can help inspire you at some point.
And it might not be the exact same. Your journey is not going to be Jeff's journey. It's not going to be my journey. Everyone's got a different part of life. Everyone's got different experiences, different dynamics. You might be a single dad. You might be divorced. You might be married. You're crazy like me and be remarried to your spouse. There's 100 different scenarios, but if you have someone that's already plowed the path in front of you, they can make your job way easier of being better. But there's tools in there that you can use. Those tools will be across the board helpful.
Regardless of where you are, it all starts with one thing or one area, which is basically acknowledging our past, being honest with ourselves, reflecting, and then, essentially setting our egos aside in all of our self-deception. If you're not willing to do that, it's going to be hard for you to transform. It's going to be hard for you to improve and level up as a dad, as a person, as a husband, anywhere in your life. And so if you can do those things, then you start to focus on these 4 areas, these 4 P's that Dutcher calls. So what are the 4 P's?
We got our 4 pillars. Physical, you got to start with stuff you can absolutely control. Psychological, get your mind right. Then you get into partnership, what your relationship is, and then parenting.
4 P's. If you're not married, if you are married, maybe you're a young dude, maybe you're a little bit older, it doesn't matter. The first 2, though, regardless of where you are, have to happen.
You've got to get into the physical part right away, and you got to get into the mental part. If you're not doing those 2 things, the other parts aren't going to matter. I look at it as sports a lot. You're not going to go into the football game not knowing how to play football. You're not going to go in there not having your cardio up, not having your strength up. You can't go play the game. Life's just a big game. How am I going to play the game of life if I can't be physical? If I don't have my mind right, if I don't know how to play it, it's going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to have anxiety. You're going to have depression because you're not prepared to play the game.
I love that analogy because you could take that all the way through our 4 pillars, right? You got to be in shape and you got to be ready to go, strong enough to go out and play. You got to have your mind right to go out there. And then you have your coaches that are going to help give you blueprints and the X's and O's. You need someone to help you execute once you've got yourself in that position ready to go.
The coach has to be on the sideline. They can see the whole game. You can't see the forest through the trees. When you're in the thick of it, you can't see what's going on around you, but a coach can. And that's what we're here to be, is be like, hey, dude, let's take a step back and let's look at the big picture here of what you're trying to do.
Dutch and I have been down at the bottom. We've been out of shape. We've been divorced, absent to our children, to our wives in certain areas. We weren't providing the needs that they required. We figured out ways to bring ourselves back into the picture and become stronger and better than ever. So we want to share those with you guys. Today, we're going to break down actually about 10 to 15 ways that we personally and as dads define what growth is. How many areas can you have personal growth or self-development in? We're going to talk about those 10 to 15 things now.
This is just a quick overview of everything that could be involved in it. Some of these might call out to you, some of them might not, but you get to take a little self-evaluation and go, okay, where am I at?
Write them down and then check them off. If you're good at one,
boom, let's focus on the other one.
So let's get into it. The first area that we define growth in, for me anyway, is just self-improvement. What can I get better at? There's so many aspects of it. There's skills, there's your knowledge, there's your behavior, there's your emotional intelligence. These are all areas that you can improve yourself in. This is the most obvious one, right? Like, how can I get better as a person? This doesn't really involve my kids and my wife at this point. This is kind of where we're going to like square one. Self-improvement. So what kind of skills do I have? Let's start with physical. Can I defend myself? Big skill. Can I defend my family? Can I perform physical activities if I need to go out and do something physical with my kids? Am I in shape enough to do that?
That's one of the things that I think is a good check-in for a lot of dads. If you can't go throw the baseball with your kid because you're too tired, or if you can't go ride a bike around the block because you're too big, that doesn't work.
That should be a huge red flag.
Yep, right there.
My health is not in check. I got to do something about this now.
And some of you guys might not want to hear that. I get it. That's a shitty thing to hear and go like, dude, you aren't handling that part of your life. And if you can't handle that part of your life, the rest of it's not going to get handled.
There's also communication skills. If you can't communicate with, let's just start at work, because that's for every guy, right? Hey, I'm a salesman. I'm in charge of this. I manage this. I have great communication skills. Well, you may have them there, but that doesn't mean you and your wife communicate well. You and your daughter or your son communicate well.
Which are totally different.
Which is totally different.
And each kid's different.
You have to have an array of skills in communication, not just one set of skills, because it does not translate across the board. Trust me. You try your sales techniques or tactics on your wife, you will get slammed to the floor. It doesn't work. Yeah, you try to be Mr. Manager at home with your kids and wife, they will check out on you like that.
Dude, kids don't like it when you come in like a school teacher. If you're telling them how to do it, when to do it, and you're just being a dictator, dictation does not work. Communication works.
No. We have to empathize, and we have to understand where they're coming from, and that takes a different level of skills. And so that's what I'm saying. This is self-improvement. How can I improve my communication skills? Next on my list is knowledge. Improve yourself in knowledge. I'm not just talking about like rattle me off some stats about last night's basketball game, you know? I don't care how much football knowledge you have, actual knowledge that you can apply or transcend to help someone else improve. That's what I'm talking about. So books, you know, understanding business, understanding relationships, understanding parenting. You could even go into stuff like, dude, lately I've been in like an astrology kick. It's knowledge, right? And it's actual real. It's not some fantasy where, yes, you know, I know some football stats, but go improve your skills, right? In knowledge.
It's so easy now with like Audible and YouTube. I try and at least get one little thing in every morning, all right? I have a whole morning routine, and at least a part of that, depending on the day, I'm gonna do twofold. One, I'm gonna read part of the book I'm reading, and so I'm gonna get 10 minutes in on that. And two, I'm gonna get a video in or an Audible in of something else that I'm learning about. I just had this conversation with my son. I feel like light bulbs coming on, and he's like, he wants to be better, and now he's wanting to like develop himself, and I'm like, hallelujah, like the frontal lobe's finally coming together on this kid. For him, he's like, I can't read nonfiction, Dad. I can't get behind it. Like, I can't understand it. I was like, but you have to. If you wanna be a better man, and if you wanna be the best version of you, you're gonna have to do it. And I'm not saying you eat the elephant all at once. I'm not saying you sit down and you read this whole book in one day. I'm saying if all you can do is 2 pages because your mind's gone, then do 2 pages. And then the next day try and do 3 pages. And then the next day try and do 4 pages. But you've got to start flexing that mind muscle. Otherwise you're never going to get there. So you got to try it. So it might be hard for some people who are like, man, I can't do nonfiction. I can't do self-improvement. You can. You just might have to train yourself a little bit to do it.
And you will. And that's the transition, right? From entertainment, which is what we all want right now, to actual knowledge. And when you transition, there's some tough barriers in there. That is definitely self-improvement, is going from entertainment-based to knowledge-based.
Yeah, and then you'll be a weird freak like us where you don't even listen to music in the car and all you're listening to is Audible books.
And that's the transition that we've made that's really helped make a difference in our lives. I got 2 more, all right? Behavior, self-improvement and behavior. Understanding my food choices, right? That's a behavior. Do I go eat bad food or do I make good food choices throughout the day? Sleep, my sleep patterns. Am I going to bed at the same time at night? Am I getting up at the same time every morning? Am I getting consistent sleep? And then what happens after and before I do those? Affection as well, you know? How am I showing affection to my wife, to my kids? Is it enough? Is it in the right ways? You know, there's several ways that I can improve that so that it benefits everyone. And lastly, more emotional intelligence, right? That kind of goes back to triggers, kind of goes back to behaviors, responses versus reactions. Am I understanding that I have a choice to respond to Aaron when he says something, or am I just reacting right at you with the first thing that comes to mind?
That was one of the hardest ones for me to get in control. I mean, still, I have my moments where I'm not, 100% on that, but I learned, and the thing that worked for me was, I'm not going to react. I'm going to remove myself, because otherwise I don't have the right skill set yet.
And that's the awareness that you had to create within yourself to understand.
So now it's fine. I don't have to remove myself, but there's still sometimes, I think it was Sunday, I was like, that's it. Dad needs 10 minutes. I'm going to go sit in the office.
But then you kind of ponder that response, right? Like, when I go back in there, what should my response be?
Exactly. And then it's much better. And it's like, hey guys, here's what's going on. Here's what I feel. Here's what you're feeling. What do we do go from here to make this better? And then it's fine. But it's that knee-jerk reaction or that trigger that's just like not good. And we all have. We've created them with our spouses and with our children, where we have this automatic reaction. I call it the already always listening. We have a way of listening to people that no matter what they say, they're going to show up that way for us. And we've created that with our spouses and our kids. And unless we can shift that to say, okay, I'm not going to hear them the same way I always hear them, it's amazing what opens up.
But that takes practice.
Tons of practice.
The last one is understanding controllables versus non-controllables. We have to be able to recognize those and be aware of those throughout the day, and that helps hone our skill and our self-improvement on emotional intelligence. First thing is self-improvement, guys. That is one way you can define personal growth. Dutch, tell us number 2.
Self self-actualization.
Self-actualization.
Comes into what we're kind of talking about with all these other skill sets. It's being aware, being brutally honest with yourself. Getting that ego out of the way, I think, is one of the hardest things for men to do, because we have to go out and we have to fight the world every day, right? And the only way we can fight the world every day is having that ego to kind of back us up. But there's a time and a place where we got to let that ego go so we can get real, so we can get better. And if we can't get real, we're not going to get better. And so you have to be real with yourself and say, all right, where am I not doing good? Where am I failing? What is my little self-check to go, okay, here's the places where I'm not showing up right now.
No, I like that. And then I think once you can do that, then it's time to flip the script and say, how do I make myself happy? What purpose do I have? And how can I go out and fulfill that too, right? Why are all these things causing me to feel a certain way? Why am I reacting this way? It's because I haven't actually self-actualized what my purpose is, what is going to make me fulfilled out in the world. And whether that's being, a better dad, a better husband, changing your career, finding a passion and a hobby, we have to understand those things about ourselves so we can actually become the person that is going to make us happy in the life and give that back to our community and back to our families.
Absolutely.
The third way, guys, that we can define personal growth is learning and adapting. We have to take our past experiences and reflect on them. You have to, dude. You have to understand, okay, I went through this divorce, let's say in your situation. Why did it happen? What was my contribution? And how can I go back through and learn from it? Are you doing that on a regular basis with the stuff in your life? That's the question I have for you. Because if you're not, dude, how are you going to grow anywhere? If you're not learning from the past.
That's the greatest thing about the past. We don't want to dwell on it. You don't want to live in it. Like, we don't want to live in the past. We don't want to live in the future. We try and be present all the time. Like, that's the goal, right? How do I be present? But you got to learn from those, and you got to plan ahead. So that's that balance. How do we do all that stuff? Randa and I say it all the time. Like, those 3, 4, 5 years of going to the rock bottom and just destroying everything, getting divorced, losing our family. At the same time, we lost our house, lost our business. I mean, we lost everything. And you look back at that and you're like, it almost seems like a dream now. Like, it almost didn't happen. But at the same time, like, we cherish that. And we go back all the time. We say, we wouldn't have done it any other way because of where we're at now. And so we've learned from those things to make it a million times better. And that's huge. So you've got to learn from it.
So if you ever presented with these same challenges, you know what to do. You have the experience and now you're going to apply it. But I think a lot of people don't, man. There's a funny example I heard online somewhere. It's like, learning is your capacity to change how you react to the same stimulus. So someone was doing an example, like if I pull a red card out of my pocket and I slap you and then I put it back in my pocket, if I pull it out again and I slap you and you don't do anything, if I pull it out a third time, what are you going to do? You're going to block or duck. But some people don't do that. They just keep taking the slap, man. They keep taking the slap every time it comes around, and this could be with relationships. It could become, when your kids get challenging. It could be with your social circle, your friends, with vices, whatever it is, man. You got to duck or block when that slap is coming or that red card comes out, right? That's learning. That's learning right there.
Well, and it's funny because we go through insanity trying to do the same things over and over and over again and expecting that different results are going to happen. And that's what I try and tell my kids all the time. Like, if you want to have something different show up in your life, then you've got to do something different. Whatever your situation is, doing the same thing and then expecting it's not going to turn out different. It's not going to happen.
And one of the ways I learned it the hard way was the way I talked to my wife. Years ago, I would have the same tones, the same reactions, and I would get the same response. But I would always look at her response, and I'm sure you've been here too, and a lot of you guys have been here, as the cause. Why can't she respond different? Well, it's because I didn't learn a different way to talk to my wife. I didn't learn how to communicate better, how to use a tone better, how to ask better questions.
And there's going to be some growing pains with that. You're going to experiment a little bit. You're like, well, what if I do this? Maybe that's worse. Okay, so now I'm going to do that, and maybe that's better. But you've got to try different things.
It was learning through my experience, yes, and then I adapted, which is the second part of what has to happen. Because some people and a lot of men do the same thing over and over and over, like you said, and expect a different result. It could also be the same thing with disciplining your kids. You're constantly disciplining the same way, and they're not changing. How can I learn?
And that's, I think, a great example too, because I have to discipline each one of my kids different. If I came down like a ton of bricks on lot, kid just shuts down, shuts up. Okay, whatever you say, Dad, but that doesn't change anything. He's just like, I know how to get out of this, and this is what I'm going to do. I had to go in to him with a totally different way of like, hey, Lot, we need to talk about this, because this is what's not showing, and actually have a conversation with him. Brick, on the other hand, I have to come down like a ton of bricks. Dude, dude, this doesn't work.
You didn't know that when you named him, did you?
And that's probably what it's from. It's like, hey, this is how it's going to work. 2 kids, a year and a half apart, 2 years apart, and totally different parents.
Same family, same parents, but different styles of learning.
But we had to figure that out through trial and error.
2 other ways you could do it, is obviously you could do spending habits. People have to learn and apply different spending habits to their family. Hey, if I frivolously buy all this stuff, we could be broke. We could be tight this month. We may not be able to take a vacation this year. You just have to learn from past experiences and then adapt. And I think that's number 3. That's the third way that you can define personal growth. Number 4, Dutch.
Maturity. What does it mean to be mature as a dad and a man? What does it mean?
I think it's emotional intelligence. That's the hardest thing that men have to deal with, is that impulse to respond, right? That impulse to get frustrated, that impulse to get angry or want to fight or yell, because if we don't have any sort of emotional intelligence, those just seem natural. I'm going to yell at my kids. I'm going to get mad at traffic. I'm going to argue with my wife. Those are just the impulse. And I think that, to maturity is understanding your emotions and how to deal with them.
It's the carnal man, right? If we just had no maturity, no knowledge, no skill set, anything, if we're just carnal, just the way man was put on the earth, we're going to be that. We're going to be an asshole. We're going to be rowdy. We're going to be mad. We're going to be yelling at everyone because it's the easiest thing to do, right? What is the easiest emotion to do? Anger. It bowls people over, generally gets resolved, but it leaves destruction in its path. Yep. It's not a good way to do it. We're naturally wired that way from just eons of development.
Oh yeah, it's innate. Yeah, for sure.
And evolution. If you can control that, then that changes everything. And so the maturity level to be able to look at your emotions and look at these skill sets and do all these things and go, hey, this doesn't leave good things behind it. Maybe it gets resolved, but it doesn't give good things. That's huge. A really good guy that was talking about this, it was Dale Brisby, and he said, you know what? I can decide how peaceful my life is by how I react when I'm driving. And if I'm out there driving and all of a sudden, someone cuts me off and I'm getting angry and I'm yelling at someone, something's not right in my life.
That's a perfect way to look in the mirror right there, man. I love that. Because we can all relate to that.
I rarely anymore ever get mad at someone when I'm driving. Then I know things are good.
But you could think back 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Even I had a guy, I don't even know, maybe a year ago, drove by me, flipped me off and spit at my car. And I was like, man, he must be really having a bad day. Mm-hmm. And I literally had no clue. Maybe I cut him off. Maybe I was in my own world. I have no clue.
But you had no impulse to react to that.
Literally what went through my head is dude, 5 years ago, I would have chased that guy down. I'd have been yelling in his face because it was so over the top. But this time I was like, man, he must be having a really bad day.
That's maturity at its finest right there, man.
So I love that because I think we can all relate to that. How we react there tells us where we're at.
Another one that kind of goes along with that is impulsiveness. Do I have the maturity to not give in to my impulses, whether it is fantasy stuff for dudes, whether it's drinking with the boys, whether it's wanting to be physical with my kids when I'm upset, these quick impulses that we have, can I control those? That is a huge factor when it comes to maturity for men.
Absolutely. I think those 2 things that we've touched on right there are the biggest 2 factors.
Maturity, it's a good one. The 5th way that we can define personal growth or growth in general is how resilient are we? How do we bounce back from setbacks? How do we respond in the face of challenges? You got to take an inventory of yourself. You got to ask yourself some honest questions when it comes to this. What is my tolerance for when my wife speaks to me a certain way, when things don't go my way at work, when my kids won't listen to me? How resilient can I be to come back to that situation and figure out how to navigate those challenges?
You have to be resilient. I love the term resilience. I love the term perseverance. I love enduring. I think all those things you have to have as a man. There's something rewarding about that too. When you go through a challenge, you feel better. It's like they always say, the best views are after the hardest hikes, right? Once you've climbed the mountain, nothing looks better than that view right then, because you've worked your ass off to get there, and it was a challenge, and it's huge. If you could drive your car to the top of that same mountain and be like, okay, cool, yeah, this is pretty neat, and it'll mean nothing to you. But if you go through the challenge and you go through and you're resilient and you stick with it and you persevere, everything's more beautiful on the other side of that.
And I think people have to understand this, right? From so many aspects. From fitness, you can't take the blue pill in fitness and expect it to last, man. You do the work, you're proud of it, and then it lasts. It's sustainable, right? Marriage, you and your wife probably went through a ton of stuff during your divorce, but now you come back, you're stronger, you understand the challenges, and you understand how to get through them. You're more resilient as a couple.
Because things that would have maybe floored us, 5 years years ago, 10 years ago, where all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? Or that would happen, maybe we wouldn't talk for 5 days. Now it's a blip on the radar. We're like, okay, sorry you saw it that way. Here's how I saw it. Can we move on? Yep, we're good.
I think one of the big questions too that I have to ask myself and people should ask themselves, did I really try? Did I put my best effort into something to say that I was either resilient or not? There's so many people that think a little bit of effort's going to get them all the way through. I have family members, I have close friends that do the bare minimum, and if they don't get what they want, they quit.
Yeah, like, oh, that's, I don't know. I think I was born a little bit different just because I will make a square peg fit in a round hole if it's the last thing I do, almost to a fault. My best friend's a great barometer for me because he's the opposite in a lot of ways. And he's like, well, if it doesn't work, move on. And so we balance each other out again because it's like, no, I will make this work and it's going to happen. And sometimes he's just like, Dutch, you got to let it go. Just let it go.
Well, this goes back to learning and adapting for Dutcher too sometimes.
So we have things that we've got to continue to learn and grow on. And I think that's the best thing you can do is take the advice from other people, take the coaching, see where those things are so that you can continue to work to be better. And resiliency is one of those things where you kind of just got to go through it. Like you got to put yourself in situations that are stressful. Like there's a study that showed like men need stress. You have to have some stress. We're not talking like mounds of stress that's going to cause you a heart attack, but you have to have some because it allows your body to continue to function.
That's our evolution as men.
Yeah, you have to have it. I look back at like things at work. Like there were things that I had to tackle 15 years ago that now it's like, oh yeah, it's just a phone call. Cool, yeah, we're good. But 15 years ago, it's like, oh my gosh, this is going on. The sky is falling. Our pets' heads are falling off. Like the world is coming to an end. And now it's just like, yeah, whatever.
Well, there's always one phrase that goes through my head, dude, whenever I do anything. It's I can only fail or lose if I quit. You know what I mean? And so if you can have that mindset with everything, fitness, with your marriage, with your kids, with your community, your work, wherever, I can only fail or lose if I quit. Otherwise, you just keep going, and that's what resilience is. No matter what hurdles you face, no matter what challenges are in front of you, no matter what responses you get, you can only fail if you quit. The sixth way, man, to define personal growth, mindfulness and awareness. What do you got?
Boom, boom, boom. I think the steps that we're showing here is all these little things, right, that we're starting with that get you to the next thing, to the next thing, and the next thing. So as we're into the final steps of this list, it's like a lot of these things compacting into one. So mindfulness and awareness is all of these things that we've talked about. It's the maturity, the resilience, the knowledge. You're taking these other steps and you're packaging them into one and you're going, okay, how am I going to look at this? And it's kind of that self-inventory again. Where am I at? What am I being cognizant of? What am I not? And what are you aware of? Because it's really easy for men to check out. Like, I mean, I look at when I go to church and I go to my kids' sporting events or their concert, dude, I will look around the room and I tell you, I take an inventory next time you go. 90%, if not 95% of those dads are checked out. They are not aware of anything that's going on around them.
There's two things that I had to learn. One was self-deception. What am I seeing that's not really happening? You know what I mean? And that's, men do this a lot because we're always looking for an out. It's Dutcher's fault that this didn't get done at work. It is the coach's fault my son doesn't play as much as he should on the basketball team. It's my wife's fault that we don't have a great relation. We're always looking and deceiving ourselves about what our role is and how we're playing a role in that. So we're looking for those out. That's one thing I had to change. I had to say, hey, where's my self-deception and how can I change that? And the other one is reflection. Like you said, it's just, that's mindfulness and awareness, is how often do I reflect on situations in my life and to what degree? Because some men will just do it very shallowly, because if it goes too deep, then they're being honest, and that's hard for them. And some men can actually do it pretty deep, and that takes a lot of practice and a lot of letting your ego down. And then some men too will only do it once a month, maybe, and say, oh well, I thought about this stuff this month, next month I'll think about it. Reflection, I think, is a daily process, man. For me, it's like brushing my teeth, it's like going to the gym. I have to reflect every day, and I'm not saying it's just deep stuff. It's, I take an inventory on my days. How was my mood today? How's my response to this? How's my effort towards work? Have I checked in with people? Have I said something positive to my wife? Have I done something for my kids? Did I say something I regret? Those things go through my head now, like constantly. Like they're just second nature. And I don't know if that happens for a lot of dudes.
I don't think so. I really don't. I think when you start having those conversations, if you get into a moment where you can talk to someone like that and say, hey, where are things at? Or what are you doing? What do guys say all the time? I'm good. I'm fine. Things are great. Once you get into it though, you find out we're not. There's a lot of things that aren't working and are not working well.
And I've talked to a coworker of mine, and there's a couple things the guys say when you know it's not right. Like if I ask you how you doing, you say, "Oh, I'm just hanging in there, man. Not too bad, just trying to get through or just trying to get by." Those are signs that something deep's going on, but they don't want to talk about it at the moment, or they need it to be brought out of them.
And again, just awareness. Yeah. Where is it at? What are we aware of around us? What are we aware of with our spouse, our kid? What's that all look like?
The seventh way to define personal growth or development is character. It's a huge one. What is your character? Like, what do you stand for? What are your values? How do you treat people? How do you treat yourself? Integrity. What are you doing when no one's looking? It's a huge one. What are your non-negotiables in life? What areas do you negotiate in that cause you to have issues or cause you to be unhappy? Look at those, examine them, evaluate them, and understand why you may be negotiating with them.
I love that we've talked about all these different aspects, and we keep saying the inventory or the checking in. Write it all down, dude. I keep a running notebook, probably too many different notes. What are those character developments though? And this is something I did years and years and years ago when I knew things weren't right. Who are people around me with traits that I like and admire, and then how do I develop those? Write it down. Say like, hey, I want to be cool and motivated like Jeff. Okay, how did Jeff get motivated? How do I do that? For me, I wanted to be patient and I wanted to be kinder in my conversations. I didn't want to get so worked up when things happen. And for me, a lot of it did boil back to anger and getting that under control. And it's like, okay, so how do I have calmness in my life? How do I have peace in my life? And who are people that have that? And how do I get like them? So write them all down. And these are the characters I want to be. Write out what that character looks like in a movie. And if you were going to play that character, how are you going to do that?
Build an avatar.
Yeah.
Like if you could build the ideal human and build it and then become it. I feel like that should be everyone's purpose and everyone's goal, at least if they want to be the 2.0 or the best version, right?
Perfect.
Being honest with yourself, your family, your friends, that is a huge character trait. If Dutch asks me a hard question and I just tell him something to sugarcoat it, that's not great character because I'm not helping you get better at anything, right? Sometimes it's not easy, especially when it comes to your wife or your kids or your coworkers. People struggle with this. They can't say the truth. And I don't know if it's because they don't understand the best way to say it or they're worried about hurting feelings.